The waiting room smelled like lavender and hope. Soft instrumental music drifted through the speakers as patients shifted in their chairs, some leafing through magazines, others staring at their phones. Doctor, Sarah Chen glanced at her watch 2 minutes until her next session. She reached down to scratch behind the ears of the golden retriever, sitting patiently beside her chair, his tail thumping softly against the carpet. Ready for another day, Max? The dog's brown eyes met hers, warm and attentive. In the 8 years Max had been part of Riverside Psychiatric Hospital's therapy program, he'd never once failed to bring comfort to a patient, never once shown aggression, never once refused to do his job. He was, as Sarah often told colleagues, the most reliable therapist on staff. The door to the waiting room opened, and a woman walked in. She was in her early 40s, with shoulder-length brown hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Her smile was immediate and bright, almost too bright for someone checking into a psychiatric facility. Dr. Chen? The woman extended her hand. I'm Emily Brooks. I'm so excited to start the program. Sarah stood, shaking the offered hand. Welcome, Emily. We're glad to have you. This is Max. He'll be part of your therapy sessions. Oh, I love dogs. Emily crouched down, reaching toward Max with eager fingers. Come here, sweet boy. But Max didn't move. His ears flattened against his head. A low sound rumbled in his chest, not quite a growl, but close. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. Max? She touched his head gently. It's okay, buddy. The dog backed away from Emily, his body tense. His gaze never left the woman's face. And that rumble grew louder. Emily straightened, her smile faltering. Is he okay? I'm so sorry. Sarah's mind raced. This had never happened before. Never. He's usually incredibly gentle. I don't know what's gotten into him today. Maybe he's having an off day. Emily's voice was understanding, but Sarah caught a flicker of something in the woman's eyes. Concern? Or was it fear? Let me take him out for a moment. Sarah tugged gently on Max's therapy vest. We'll be right back. In the hallway, Sarah knelt beside the golden retriever. What's going on with you? She searched his face, looking for signs of illness or distress. His nose was cool, his breathing normal, but his body remained rigid, his attention fixed on the closed door to the waiting room. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca, the program coordinator. Everything okay? Saw you leave with Max. Sarah typed back. Max is acting strange with new patient. First time ever. Not sure what to do. The response came quickly. Admin already called. Patient filed complaint. Said dog was aggressive. They want incident report. Sarah's heart sank. A complaint. On day 1. From a patient who seemed perfectly pleasant. She looked down at Max. His eyes met hers, and she saw something there she'd learned to recognize over their years together: urgency. He was trying to tell her something. Okay, she whispered. I trust you, but you're going to have to help me understand. When they returned to the waiting room, Emily was on her phone, her back to them. At the sound of the door, she turned, and that bright smile returned. Oh, good. You're back. Max's reaction was immediate and visceral. He planted his feet, his hackles rising. A sharp bark tore from his throat, something Sarah had never heard from him before. Pure warning. Emily stumbled backward, her phone clattering to the floor. What is wrong with that dog? I'm so sorry, Emily. Sarah's professional composure was cracking. I think we need to reschedule your first session. Let me get Max checked by the vet. Make sure everything's okay with him. Fine. The word came out clipped. The warm, understanding patient from moments ago had vanished, replaced by someone with hard eyes and a tight jaw. But I'm reporting this. I came here for help, and I'm being threatened by an animal. After Emily left, Sarah sat in her office with Max at her feet. The dog had calmed, but remained alert. She pulled up Emily Brooks's intake file on her computer. Single, no children, worked as a paralegal, seeking treatment for anxiety and depression following a difficult divorce. Everything seemed routine, But Max knew something she didn't. Sarah picked up her phone and called Dr. Marcus Webb, the hospital's chief of psychiatry. "Marcus, I need to talk to you about something unusual. The therapy dog incident." His voice was weary. "Sarah, I already have 3 messages from our legal team. The patient is threatening to sue. Marcus, in 8 years, Max has never, I know his record. But we can't have a therapy animal showing aggression to patients. You know that. If he does it again, we'll have to remove him from the program." The words hit like a punch. Remove Max? Her partner, her friend, the most intuitive and gentle soul she'd ever worked with. "Give me a chance to figure this out," Sarah said. "1 week. If I can't determine what happened, I'll accept whatever decision you make." A long pause. 1 week. "But Sarah, if he shows any aggression to anyone else, he's done. No second chances." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, her laptop balanced on her knees, scrolling through article after article about canine behavior, scent detection, and therapy dog protocols. Max slept on the floor beside her bed, as he had every night for the past 8 years. What had he sensed? Dogs could detect cancer, predict seizures, smell fear and stress hormones. But what had Emily Brooks carried that had triggered such an extreme reaction? Sarah sat up suddenly. Scent memory. Dogs never forgot a scent they associated with danger or trauma. Had Max encountered Emily somewhere before? The hospital organized community events, mental health awareness days, charity fundraisers. Had their paths crossed? She grabbed her phone and opened the hospital's event archives, scrolling back through months of photos. There, 6 months ago. A community wellness fair. Sarah enlarged each photo, studying faces in the crowd, and then she saw him. Max, his therapy vest clearly visible, sitting beside a woman who was petting him. Sarah zoomed in on the woman's face. Brown hair, kind smile. Probably in her 40s. The caption listed attendees, including one name, Emily Brooks, volunteer coordinator. Sarah's breath caught. That woman looked like the Emily who had come to the hospital today. But something was different. The woman in the photo had a small mole above her right eyebrow. The Emily from today had no such mark. Perhaps she'd had it removed. But 6 months wasn't long enough for complete healing and no scarring. And the bone structure, now that Sarah was looking carefully, was subtly different. Slightly different cheekbones, different nose shape. Her hands trembled as she opened a new search tab. Emily Brooks missing person. The first result made her blood run cold. Local woman missing for 3 months. Family desperate for answers. The article was dated 2 months ago. The photo showed the same woman from the wellness fair, the same Emily Brooks, who had volunteered at the hospital, who Max had met and befriended. But according to this article, Emily Brooks had disappeared without a trace 3 months ago. Her car was found abandoned at a hiking trail. Her apartment showed no signs of struggle. She had simply vanished. But if Emily Brooks had been missing for 3 months, then who was the woman who had walked into the hospital today? Sarah's mind spun. Identity theft? But why? What would someone gain from pretending to be a missing woman to check into a psychiatric hospital? Unless she opened a new search. Emily Brooks, life insurance. Another article, this one from a local business journal, profiling successful paralegals in the area. Emily Brooks had recently won a major case, earning her firm substantial recognition. The article mentioned almost in passing that Emily had just taken out a significant life insurance policy as part of her firm's benefits package. $2 million. Sarah stared at her screen. Someone was pretending to be Emily Brooks. Emily Brooks had disappeared 3 months ago. Emily Brooks had a $2 million life insurance policy. But there was a problem with collecting on a life insurance policy when someone was just missing. You usually had to wait years for a death certificate to be issued. Unless there was a body. Unless there was proof of death. Or unless you could establish a pattern of mental illness and suicidal ideation, documented by medical professionals at a psychiatric hospital. Sarah's hands shook as she reached for her phone. This wasn't just identity theft. This was something far darker. If her theory was correct, the real Emily Brooks was dead, and the woman who had come to the hospital was the person who had killed her. Max had known. Somehow, the dog had recognized that the woman claiming to be Emily Brooks was not the same person he'd met 6 months ago. Different scent, different person, and he tried to warn everyone. At 7 the next morning, Sarah sat across from Detective Robert Morrison at the Riverside Police Department. She'd brought everything: the photos from the wellness fair, the articles about missing Emily Brooks, her theory about the life insurance fraud. Morrison listened, his expression carefully neutral. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Dr. Chen, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention, but I have to ask, what prompted this investigation? What made you suspect this woman wasn't who she claimed to be?" Sarah hesitated. "My therapy dog reacted to her. Aggressively. He's never done that before." The detective's eyebrows rose. "Your dog. I know how it sounds. But Max has been trained for 8 years. He met the real Emily Brooks 6 months ago at a hospital event. When this woman showed up claiming to be Emily, he knew immediately something was wrong." Morrison drummed his fingers on his desk. "Dogs can't testify in court. Dr. Chen, I'm not asking him to. I'm asking you to investigate. Compare the woman at my hospital to the missing person case. Check fingerprints, dental records. I'm giving you a lead." The detective studied her for a long moment. "The Emily Brooks missing person case is active, but cold. We have very few leads. If you're right, and that's a big if, then we might finally have a break." He stood. "I'll need you to keep this quiet. Can you do that? What about the woman at the hospital? She's scheduled for another session tomorrow. Keep the appointment. Act normal. If she suspects we're onto her, she'll run." Morrison pulled out a card. "But if anything feels dangerous, you call me immediately." "Understood?" The next morning, Sarah walked into the hospital with Max at her side and fear in her heart. She'd barely slept. What if she was wrong? What if the woman really was Emily Brooks, and Sarah was making a horrible mistake based on a dog's reaction? But what if she was right? What if she was about to sit in a room with a murderer? Emily, or whoever she was, arrived 15 minutes early for her appointment. She wore a soft blue sweater and jeans, and that same bright smile. "Good morning, Dr. Chen. Is your dog feeling better today?" "Much better, thank you. He had a checkup with the vet. Clean bill of health." Sarah kept her voice steady, professional. "But I think it's best if Max sits this session out, just to be safe." Relief flashed across the woman's face. "Oh, that's probably wise. I wouldn't want him to be stressed." Sarah led her to the therapy room, leaving Max with Rebecca in the office. The dog whined as she closed the door, a sound that made Sarah's heart ache. He knew what she was walking into. For the next 45 minutes, Sarah conducted what appeared to be a standard intake interview. She asked about family history, about the divorce Emily had mentioned, about work stress and anxiety symptoms. The woman across from her answered smoothly, her story consistent and believable. Too believable, perhaps, too rehearsed. "Tell me about your childhood," Sarah said, watching carefully. "Where did you grow up?" "Seattle. Rainy city. But I loved it." Sarah nodded, making notes. The real Emily Brooks, according to that Business Journal article, had grown up in Phoenix. She'd mentioned in interviews how the desert heat shaped her resilience. "And your family?" "2 brothers, both older. Classic middle child syndrome." The woman laughed. The real Emily had been an only child. Her parents had mentioned it in the missing person report, their desperation intensified by the fact that Emily was their only daughter, their whole world. Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at it subtly, a text from Detective Morrison. "On our way. Keep her talking. Emily, I'd like to try something today." Sarah kept her voice calm. "Clinical. A grounding exercise. It's helpful for anxiety. Would you be willing?" "Of course. Whatever you think will help." "Great. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and think back to a happy memory. Something from before all the stress. Before the divorce. Can you do that?" The woman closed her eyes, her face relaxing into a peaceful expression. Now describe it to me. Where are you? I'm at the beach. The Oregon coast. The wind is blowing, and I can taste the salt in the air. Sarah's pen stilled. The real Emily Brooks had been terrified of the ocean. Her parents had mentioned it in interviews how Emily had nearly drowned as a child, how she never went near large bodies of water. Tell me about the water, Sarah pressed. What does it feel like? Cold? Refreshing? I love wading in, up to my knees, feeling the pull of the tide. There it was, the crack in the facade. Sarah set down her pen. Open your eyes, please. The woman did, still smiling. How was that? Jessica Miller. The smile froze. For a heartbeat. Neither of them moved. I'm sorry? The woman's voice had changed lower, harder. That's your real name, isn't it? Jessica Miller. You knew Emily Brooks. Maybe you worked with her, or you were friends. You learned about her life, her habits, her job, and 3 months ago, something happened. Maybe it was planned, maybe it wasn't, but Emily Brooks died. And you saw an opportunity. Jessica, because Sarah was certain now, stood slowly. You don't know what you're talking about. A $2 million life insurance policy. That's what this is about, isn't it? But there's a problem with collecting when someone's just missing. You need proof of death, or you need to establish a pattern of suicidal behavior. Check yourself into a psychiatric hospital. Create a medical record of severe depression and instability. And then what? Stage a suicide? Make it look like Emily Brooks finally succumbed to her mental illness? You're insane. But Jessica's hands were shaking. Her eyes darted to the door. The dog knew. Sarah continued. Max met Emily 6 months ago at a hospital event. Dogs don't forget scents. When you walked in pretending to be her, he knew immediately you were someone else. A dog? Jessica's laugh was brittle. You're accusing me of whatever insanity you're suggesting because of a dog? No. I'm accusing you because Emily Brooks grew up in Phoenix, not Seattle. Because she was an only child, not a middle child. Because she was terrified of the ocean and would never wade into it. You studied her life, Jessica, but you couldn't study her memories. The door opened. Detective Morrison stepped in, his badge visible. Another officer behind him. Jessica Miller, we have a warrant for your arrest in connection with the disappearance of Emily Brooks. Jessica's face crumpled. For a moment, Sarah thought she might run or fight, but then something inside her seemed to break. She sank back into her chair, her hands covering her face. She was going to leave him, Jessica whispered. David, my brother. She was going to leave him and take everything, the house, the business they'd built together. He would have been destroyed. Sarah's throat tightened. So you killed her. I didn't mean to. Jessica's voice was small, childlike. We were hiking, and I just wanted to talk to her, to convince her to stay. But she wouldn't listen. She said David was controlling, that she needed to escape. We argued, and I pushed her, and she fell. It was so fast. The ravine was so deep, and the life insurance? That was after. David was falling apart, drowning in bills. I looked so much like Emily, people had always said so. We'd been friends since college. I knew everything about her. I thought I could help him. Just long enough to collect the insurance, and then I'd disappear too. No one would ever know. Morrison was reading her rights. But Jessica didn't seem to hear. She looked at Sarah with desperate eyes. How did you figure it out? How did anyone figure it out? Sarah thought of Max, waiting in the other room. The loyal golden retriever, who had never failed her, who had tried so hard to warn her from that very first moment. Someone who loved Emily, Sarah said quietly, knew you weren't her. The search teams found Emily Brooks's body the next day, at the bottom of a ravine in the Angeles National Forest, exactly where Jessica Miller said it would be. She'd been dead for 3 months, just as Sarah had suspected. The forensic evidence supported Jessica's confession of fall, blunt force trauma, and 3 months of decomposition in the elements. Jessica's brother, David, was taken in for questioning. He claimed he'd known nothing about Jessica's plan, that he'd been horrified when he found out. The investigators weren't sure they believed him. The legal proceedings would take months, maybe years, but Emily's parents finally had closure. Their daughter could be laid to rest. Sarah stood in her office 3 days after the arrest, watching through the window as Max played in the hospital's courtyard with a group of patients. His tail wagged as a young woman threw a tennis ball, and he bounded after it with the same gentle enthusiasm he always showed. Marcus knocked on her doorframe. "Quite a week you've had." "That's putting it mildly." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I owe you an apology. And Max, when the complaint came in, I should have trusted your judgment. You were protecting the hospital. I understand." "No. I was protecting liability." Marcus shook his head. "There's a difference. That dog has been nothing but extraordinary for 8 years. One complaint, and I was ready to throw him out of the program." He paused. "The board wants to give him a commendation. They're calling him a hero." Sarah smiled, watching Max return the ball to the patient. He was just doing his job, trying to keep everyone safe. From a murderer pretending to be a patient, that's a bit above and beyond his job description. Marcus pulled out a folder. "Speaking of which, I've been getting calls. Other hospitals, therapy programs, even some police departments. They want to know about Max's training, how he was able to detect what he detected. There's talk of developing protocols, teaching other therapy animals to recognize. I don't even know what to call it. Scent inconsistencies? Identity fraud? I think Max would tell you it's simpler than that," Sarah said. "He just remembered a friend, and he knew when someone who wasn't that friend tried to pretend they were." Marcus left, and Sarah went down to the courtyard. Max saw her coming and trotted over, tennis ball in mouth. She knelt beside him, scratching behind his ears the way he loved. "You tried to tell me from the start, didn't you, boy?" His tail wagged, and he dropped the ball at her feet. "I should have listened sooner. I'm sorry I doubted you." Max leaned against her, warm and solid and loyal. In the 8 years they'd worked together, he'd brought comfort to hundreds of patients. He'd never asked for recognition or praise. He'd simply done his job with steadfast dedication, and when it mattered most, when someone vulnerable had been harmed and the truth had been buried, Max had refused to stay silent. He'd refused to let a killer hide behind a stolen identity. Sarah thought about Emily Brooks, the real Emily who had volunteered at a wellness fair 6 months ago and spent time petting a gentle golden retriever. Emily had been kind, according to everyone who knew her. She'd been trying to escape a bad situation, to build a better life. She hadn't gotten that chance. But because of Max, because of his refusal to accept the woman who'd killed her, Emily's family finally had answers. Justice had been served. That evening, Sarah brought Max home to her small house on the quiet side of Riverside. She made him his favorite dinner, chicken and rice, with vegetables, and sat on the floor beside him while he ate. "The news crews want to interview you," she told him. "They're calling you the dog who solved a murder." But I told them no. You don't need the attention. You know what you did, and that's enough. Max finished his dinner and rested his head on her lap. His brown eyes gazed up at her with that same steady devotion she'd come to depend on. Sarah had worked with therapy animals for over a decade. She'd seen remarkable things: dogs who could predict seizures, cats who sat with dying patients in their final hours, even a rabbit who'd somehow known when a child was being abused at home and had refused to leave the child's side. But this was different. Max hadn't just sensed illness or distress. He'd recognized the absence of someone he'd known. He'd understood, on some level beyond human comprehension, that the woman claiming to be Emily was an imposter. How did you teach that? How did you train for that kind of intuition? You didn't, Sarah realized. You just trusted it. You trusted that these animals, these faithful defenders, saw the world in ways humans couldn't, and when they tried to warn you, when they showed you that something was wrong, you listened. She'd almost failed at that. She'd almost let pressure and protocol and fear of litigation override what Max was trying to tell her. The thought made her feel sick. "I promise," she whispered, stroking his soft fur. "I'll never doubt you again." 2 weeks later, Sarah received a letter. It was handwritten, the script shaky but legible. It was from Emily Brooks's mother. "Dear Dr. Chen and Max," it began. "I don't have words for what you've given our family. For 3 months, we didn't know if Emily was alive or dead. We hoped every day that she'd walk through the door, that there would be some explanation. But we also feared the worst. The not knowing was torture. Because of Max's vigilance and your willingness to listen to him, we finally have peace. We can bury our daughter. We can grieve properly. We can begin to heal." Emily loved animals. She would have been so glad to know that a dog one she'd met and petted and played with was the one who made sure her death didn't go unnoticed. "Thank you doesn't seem like enough, but it's all we have. Thank you for hearing what Max was trying to tell you. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for bringing our girl home." Sarah read the letter aloud to Max that night. He listened, his head tilted, and when she finished, he licked her hand. The case made national news. Stories ran with headlines like "Therapy Dog Exposes Killer" and "Golden Retriever Solves Missing Person Case." Television shows called, wanting to feature Max. Book publishers reached out. Everyone wanted to know about the remarkable dog who had recognized an imposter. But Sarah turned them all down. She wasn't interested in fame or recognition. Neither was Max. They had work to do. Real work. Important work. Every day, patients came to Riverside Psychiatric Hospital carrying wounds that couldn't be seen. Every day, Max helped them heal. That was his purpose. That was what mattered. One afternoon, about a month after Jessica Miller's arrest, Sarah was walking Max through the hospital corridors when they passed a new patient in the waiting room. The woman looked up as Max approached, her eyes red from crying. "Can I pet him?" she asked quietly. "Of course." Sarah smiled. "This is Max. He's very gentle." The woman reached out tentatively, and Max nuzzled her hand. A small smile broke through her tears. "He's beautiful. Does he work here?" "He's a therapy dog. He helps patients feel safe and calm. I saw the news story about him. About how he knew that woman wasn't who she said she was." The patient looked at Max with wonder. How does a dog know something like that? Sarah thought about the question. She'd been asked it 100 times in the past month. Scientists had theories about scent memory and pattern recognition. Trainers talked about the incredible bond between working dogs and their handlers. Everyone had an explanation, but Sarah had come to believe something simpler and more profound. "I think he knew," she said. Because he cared. Because Emily had shown him kindness months before, and he remembered her. Not just her scent, but her, the person she was. And when someone else tried to take her place, to wear her name and her identity like a costume, Max recognized that something precious had been stolen. He couldn't let it go. Unnoticed. The patient's eyes filled with tears again. But this time, they seemed different. Softer. "That's beautiful. That's Max," Sarah said. "He sees people. Really sees them. And he doesn't forget." As they walked away, Sarah felt a sense of peace settle over her. The past month had been chaotic and frightening. She'd questioned herself, doubted her instincts, nearly given up on the most important partnership of her career. But in the end, she'd listened. She'd trusted. And that trust had made all the difference. Max looked up at her as they walked, his tail wagging in that steady, patient rhythm she knew so well. No words were needed. They understood each other perfectly, a woman and a dog, working together to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Faithful defenders, both of them. And in that moment, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever darkness they might face, they would face it together. Because that's what partners did. That's what friendship meant. Max had taught her that. Emily Brooks, in her brief meeting with a kind golden retriever months ago, had taught him that. And now, every day, in every session, with every patient who reached out to pet him and found comfort in his presence, Max carried that lesson forward. Some truths could only be seen by those willing to look beyond the surface. Some voices could only be heard by those willing to listen. And sometimes, the most important witness was the one who never said a word at all.